Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Politico Speakeasy. We are going to continue with our programming as soon as the music comes down, because thank you so much. And hopefully you guys can give us your attention for the next 15 minutes. We have another excellent interview in store. My colleague Țoiu is going to be carrying this next conversation with our special guest, so please give them a round of applause.
Good morning, folks. Thank you again for joining us this morning on the third day of the Politico Speakeasy here at GlobeSec. I'm Țoiu, Politico's Chief EU correspondent and the host of the Brussels Playbook podcast. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with me today is a very special guest. Thank you for joining us. This is Oana-Țoiu, the Foreign Minister of Romania. And this is a great time to be talking to a Foreign Minister of Romania because obviously there's a bit of upheaval in your country. There's been a no confidence vote in the Prime Minister. Tell us, what's going to happen? Who's going to be ruling Romania?
So thank you for having me. That's one. You do like to start with the easy questions. I know. What's happening in Romania is that we do have a large majority in parliament in terms of the political parties that have gained the trust of citizens to go ahead with a higher speed in growing our economies, in doing the proper reforms that are needed. There's a high majority that is confident and anchored in the transatlantic partnership. The support for NATO across all of our citizens is very high. Why am I mentioning that? Is because any change we have in our negotiations between our political parties has the imperative to be anchored in what the citizens desire and support. And that is an anchor of stability that is a good indicator of what we will do in the future in Romania. We also have now political consultations hosted by the President due to his constitutional role in assigning a proposal for a Prime Minister that has the task to create a majority in Parliament going forward. Now, there were some signs of partners being worried because some of the political representation in Parliament that has contributed to the motion to dismiss the government is formed of political parties that are highly critical to the European projects, but more than that, that did not participate in what was considered to be key in Romania, which is the investment we have in the partnership with the United States in terms of the approval that we gave through Parliament at the proposal of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Defense, the Prime Minister and the President, to allow for the logistical use of our military bases for exclusively defensive logistical support to make sure the objectives in the Middle East are protected.
So on the topic of that transatlantic relationship, obviously that has been a long-running relationship for Romania. It is a big backer of the US, but it was also the first country that suffered from this troop withdrawal last year. So how do you read that in Romania? Is the US sort of extending the hand of friendship to Romania in the same way that the previous administrations have? Or is this worrying that the troop withdrawals have hit Europe and have hit Romania specifically?
I think both things are true in the same time. I've had really good conversations with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We've met 5-6 times already, as recent as this week. With other secretaries from this current administration, we're having great conversations with Secretary Wright. We've met 3 times across Europe and Washington. Treasury, internal affairs. So I would say the relationship is in a good moment, definitely way better than 1.5 years ago. That being said, though, it is quite clear that US's decision to shift more of the focus and the resources towards Indo-Pacific has an effect. We do believe that Romania is a key country in terms of having a security role at the Black Sea. We have the longest border with the war that Russia is illegally having against Ukraine. So we do believe that having a stronger posture, a stronger contribution on Romanian territory allows for benefits in terms of security way larger than just for our country, especially that if we do look at the map, it is quite clear the role that Romania has from a logistical and security perspective, also as a connector between Europe and the Middle East.
It is a key country, but also because of that border, because of how large it is, obviously Romania has also had more than its fair share of drone overflights. That must be a concerning thing for Romanians who live on the other side of the border, Thus far, Romania hasn't shot down those drones. They've sort of kept an eye on them and waited for them to leave airspace. Will that change? Do you anticipate actually shooting them down?
Something that it's very important to say is that we have had the decision to shoot them down in many of those incidents. So our ministers of defense have given the clear command to shoot down the drone. It is the final decision of the pilot, and actually a Romanian F-16 pilot has recently taken down a drone over Estonian airspace, and that shows how important it is that we have these international air policing missions. That being said, yes, there's a reason of concern. How we answer to that reason of concern is to make sure in the conversations we're having with our allies that we do have a plan to increase our air monitoring capabilities and air defense. And with United States, we've had the same conversation, and we're grateful that they have contributed, especially on the radars and the ability to monitor our border. But also it is quite clear, not just for Romania, but for all of us countries in the eastern flank, and I would dare to say that's a lesson that has been clear in the Middle East as well, that we need new technologies that are adapted to the type of warfare that is now taking place, and especially new technologies to answer to the threat of drones. And in that sense, Ukraine has the most ground-tested experience, and we're working with them to produce this type of capabilities in Romania. It's a common Romanian-Ukrainian project, and we're also having private actors that have managed to create new innovations in that space, working with Ukrainian experts, with Romanian engineers, and US capital as well.
It's interesting that we're on this topic because Romania is one of the key beneficiaries of the safe loans that the EU has implemented. Second largest, indeed. But there is also some tension. So we saw that there were some comments that came out of the Defense Ministry saying the issue is that price inflation is really affecting how Romania is able to use the safe loans. How do you draw the balance between, on the one hand, making sure that Romania is as well equipped as it possibly can be, and on the other hand, ensuring value for money?
And we have been tough negotiators. And I think, of course, that has created a reaction, but I think it was absolutely needed because we do need to increase our defense, we do need to increase our capabilities. Most of our allies have evaluated that Romania is one of the countries that has had the fastest modernization of our army through time, but of course we still need to continue to invest in that. We have a budget allocation close to 3.7%, out of which a part of it is for logistical strategic infrastructure and ULUs, and some directed specifically at the army and procurement there. Something that's very important for us is to respect the Hague commitment. We know not all countries are on path to follow up on that commitment, but we do believe it is essential. And in our case, to be able to do that, we also need to be able to grow our economies and generate those resources in the budget. And that has meant that localization was very important, investment in jobs at home was very important, and those were aspects in the negotiation. Something that was also important for us is to increase the engagement with European partners, of course, but also create the space to advance in the engagement with United States. And we do have in the procurement plan more than 2 billion directed in the investment and procurement with our partners from the United States. Now, in terms of price inflation, there are two aspects that present a challenge now, not just for Romania. This is something we're sharing among us at NATO level every time we meet, which is speed to delivery and price inflation. Because you have an increased demand, as most countries have increased their budgets, but also a totally different pressure on time, because it's very different when you wait 5-7 years for something to be delivered when there is peacetime, and very, very different when you wait for something to be delivered when you're actually bordering a war. And of course now, because we have these simultaneous conflicts, especially in terms of air defense, there is an overlap of the need and of the demand of the areas facing those challenges. And of course, we're having these conversations with our partners in the Middle East, the Gulf countries. I've spoken with our ministers of foreign affairs there at the beginning of the conflict to be able to see how is it that our diplomatic understanding, which is that this overlap of challenges require coordination in how we create a diplomatic response, especially on reopening the Strait of Hormuz, are also diplomatic channels where we talk to each other in terms of what are the solutions in partnerships to create more speed for what needs to be offered on the air defense side.
Are you concerned, because again, you are a key frontline country here, are you concerned that because the US attention, but also the Patriot missiles, the weaponry, etc., has shifted to the Middle East, that that's going to affect the ability of Europe to defend itself in this war?
There is, of course, an increased demand that's coming from more sides. In the same time, something that is very positive, and I fully appreciate that coming from United States, is that the speed of delivery on the commitments on air defense to Ukraine has been amazing. And this is something that we've spoken about at the NATO ministerial. This is something that our Ukrainian counterparts have also shared, that there was no delay in delivery to what was essential. And it was essential because you had maternity wards, kids in the hospital, buses leading workers to their workplace, apartments where families are living that were targeted, and of course that is against any of the international criteria and rules we have established. So having that air defense in place has directly, immediately saved lives.
Romania is traditionally, historically quite close with Moldova. Obviously there is a language connection there as well. Moldova is having a pretty significant amount of Russian interference. There's also a very aggressive push by the Russians to issue Russian visas, Russian passports rather, to Transnistrian residents. Is that a worry to you that there's a pincer move around Romania?
Of course it's a worry factor, and it's not just around Romania. We see those malign narratives, those interferences, not just in Romanian informational space, but I would say many European countries have faced and identified that, especially close to election time or anytime there is a drone incursion, for example. You would also see messages appearing in a coordinated manner very close to that moment. Not to say there is no space for the organic reactions of citizens. Of course, a lot of it is authentic, but the challenge with that type of interference is to make the difference between what is authentic and what is a coordinated campaign. And there are steps we're taking in that direction. We're going to host in Bucharest in October the hybrid symposium of NATO to make sure we bring in experts from every allied country to coordinate better our response, our common pitch for the allocation of resources, to better answer to hybrid threats. Because in our assessment, the number of hybrid threats, the number of hybrid interferences, and the chances of Russia trying that in the future as well are quite high.
Well, we don't have to look very far, because we saw in the presidential election when a candidate who no one expected came out of nowhere, Georgescu, came first. That result was annulled. Now we're seeing that George Simeon is polling top of the polls. I mean, that far right kind of push, it seems like there is a Russian push for the far right in Romania. How can Romania counter that narrative? You said that you're having these meetings, you're doing these things, but another election might be around the corner. How do you defend against that sort of influence?
Okay, so one thing is I don't tend to comment about my political opponents in Parliament from the role of Minister of Foreign Affairs in these setups. So I will not comment on the polling results of one of the political parties in Parliament. But I will say this in terms of the experience we've seen in 2024. We had Georgescu, the candidate you're mentioning, reaching top 10 globally in social platforms. And imagine this was something that was happening in the Romanian information space. So imagine the frequency of the mentions if it was able to trend close to global music figures that have a global audience. And the candidate's team and the candidate himself have reported the total cost of their campaign as being zero. So you do not need to understand every detail of what's happening, although this is needed for the public institutions and our own citizens. The president has committed to putting forward a public report on what the institutions knew at that time. But it is quite clear, even for a very detached observer, that it is impossible to reach that level of information that is put in front of people that vote with zero investment in that direction. And of course, afterwards, there were incidents of his supporters having been identified with illegal weapons under the floor of their houses and so on. So there are many things that are clear in that direction, and we have seen other countries that were monitoring what's happening also be very clear on the fact that they have identified these interferences. There are also things that we need to do together in terms of preventing that, not just identifying and answering to it. And in that sense, I think it's very important that we do invest in independent media, that we do create the space for a more critical perspective, and that means to invest in education early on, and that we do need to keep spaces of debate that are protected from interferences that are not actual opinions of citizens, but rather bots commenting on AI-generated algorithms targeting citizens to try to shift their opinions. Democracy should always be about debate and competition of ideas and competition of candidates forward, but if that conversation is heavily polluted by thousands of accounts or messages that are coordinated to answer the national interests of a different country than the one where the elections take place, of course that is a huge challenge that needs to be answered.
Well, on that note, Minister Țoiu, thank you so much for joining us at the Speakeasy. Folks, thank you for joining us here in the room and online on the live stream. Don't go anywhere. We've got my colleague Nicholas Viniker up next to speak with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania. Thank you so much.
Thank you.